The alien delegation arrives. The spaceship glided silently through Earth's atmosphere, a silver disk reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. It landed softly on the designated area, a high-tech research base surrounded by lush green fields. A crowd of humans stood waiting, a mix of military officers, scientists, and diplomats. The air was thick with anticipation and a hint of nervous energy. The alien delegation emerged from their ship, walking down a ramp that shimmered with faint blue lights. They were tall, with elongated limbs and smooth, translucent skin that glowed faintly under the sunlight. Their large black eyes scanned the humans with curiosity and caution. These were the Tandari, one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. To them, humans were a young, reckless species, barely out of their technological infancy. Yet, here they were, walking onto Earth for the first time. Dr. Elena Meyer, the lead scientist and Earth's representative, stepped forward with a welcoming smile. She was a sharp woman in her 40s, with a knack for diplomacy and a reputation for staying calm under pressure. "Welcome to Earth," she said warmly, extending a hand in a gesture of peace. The Tandari leader, a being named Calthar, hesitated before mimicking the handshake. "Thank you for your hospitality," he said, his voice smooth but mechanical, translated through a small device on his chest. "We look forward to learning from your people, though we admit we find some of your customs puzzling." Dr. Meyer raised an eyebrow, but kept her smile. "Puzzling in what way?" Calthar tilted his head slightly, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Your people use strange terminology. For example, we have heard you refer to your engineers as wizards. Why is this? Are your engineers practitioners of some primitive form of magic?" The humans in the crowd chuckled softly, but Dr. Meyer held back her laugh. She didn't want to offend their alien guests. No, it's just a nickname. It's a way of saying they're so skilled it seems almost magical to us." Calthar exchanged glances with his fellow Tandari. To them, the concept was absurd. Technology was logical, precise, and calculable. There was no room for magic. They didn't understand why humans insisted on romanticizing it. Another Tandari, a junior diplomat named Vrain, stepped forward. "We mean no disrespect, but such terms are unusual for a species that claims to be advancing scientifically." Dr. Meyer smiled. "Trust me, you'll understand when you see them in action." The Tandari delegation was led into the research facility. The humans had prepared for months to make this visit impressive. The walls of the main hall were lined with holographic displays showcasing humanity's achievements, space exploration, medical breakthroughs, and the famous Mars terraforming project. The Tandari were mildly impressed, though they kept their reactions neutral. After all, their own civilization had surpassed such milestones millennia ago. As they walked through the corridors, the Tandari couldn't help but notice the energy among the human scientists and engineers. They were chatting excitedly, some whispering and pointing discreetly at the alien visitors. It was clear the humans were as curious about the Tandari as the Tandari were about them. The group finally arrived at a massive observation room. Behind the glass was Earth's most advanced spacecraft, the Prometheus X. It was sleek and black, with glowing blue energy lines running along its hull. The ship was designed for deep space exploration, but today it served another purpose: to demonstrate human ingenuity to the Tandari. "This is one of our latest models," Dr. Meyer explained, "capable of reaching speeds close to light, equipped with advanced AI, and powered by a revolutionary fusion core." Calthar examined the ship with mild interest. "Impressive for your stage of development," he said diplomatically. "But we are curious about the minds behind these creations. Are these the so-called wizards?" Dr. Meyer grinned. "You'll meet them soon. They're preparing for something special." Calthar's gaze lingered on the ship for a moment longer before turning back to Meyer. "We appreciate your efforts to impress us, but we have brought a matter of our own. One of our spacecraft is stranded in orbit around your planet. Its systems have failed, and even our engineers have been unable to repair it. We request your assistance." The room fell silent. Humans and aliens alike exchanged glances. The Tandari were known for their advanced technology, far beyond anything Earth had achieved. If they couldn't fix their own ship, what chance did humans have? Dr. Meyer's expression didn't falter. "We'd be happy to help," she said. "Our engineers love a challenge." Kelthar frowned. "Do you truly believe your people can succeed where ours have failed?" Before Dr. Meyer could respond, a voice from behind spoke up. "If anyone can, it's us." The group turned to see a man in his late 30s, wearing a worn leather jacket over his engineer's uniform. His dark hair was messy, and his face had a confident smirk. This was Daniel Carter, the lead engineer, one of the so-called wizards. Kelthar studied him skeptically. "And you are?" "Daniel Carter," he said, extending a hand. "Chief Wizard of the Earth Engineering Guild." His tone was playful, but his eyes were serious. Kelthar didn't shake his hand. "Wizard, you say? We shall see if you deserve such a title." Daniel grinned. "Oh, you will. Let's take a look at that ship of yours." The Tandari watched him walk away, their confusion deepening. What did these humans mean by wizardry? Was it arrogance, ignorance, or something else entirely? As the group prepared to leave for the next stage of their visit, Kelthar couldn't shake the feeling that this human was about to surprise them all. The broken spacecraft. The Tandari delegation escorted the humans to their spacecraft in orbit. The ship, named Zithera, floated silently in the vastness of space. Its sleek, silver hull had lost its usual luminescent glow, and several sections were dim and unresponsive. To the Tandari, it was a symbol of frustration and failure, a rare blemish on their otherwise spotless reputation. Inside the Prometheus X, Daniel Carter leaned back in his seat, a confident grin plastered on his face. His fingers danced across the ship's controls as he piloted the human craft towards the stranded Zithera. Beside him, Kelthar and Vrain sat stiffly, observing every move. To the Tandari, Daniel's casual demeanor seemed out of place, almost disrespectful given the seriousness of the situation. "You look awfully relaxed for someone about to fail," Kelthar said, his voice even but edged with skepticism. Daniel smirked but didn't look away from the controls. "Fail? Nah, we just haven't succeeded yet. Big difference." Vrain blinked, her translucent skin shifting to a faint orange, a sign of confusion among the Tandari. "Your confidence is peculiar. Our top engineers spent weeks analyzing the problem. The ship's core stabilizer is beyond repair. Do you even understand what you're dealing with?" Daniel shrugged. "I don't need to understand every detail. I just need to figure out how to make it work. That's the difference between your engineers and ours." The Prometheus X docked with the Zithera, and the humans and Tandari suited up to board the alien craft. The moment Daniel stepped inside, his confident grin faltered. The interior of the Zithera was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the ship were alive, and the controls floated midair, displaying complex patterns of light and energy. "Whoa," Daniel muttered, his eyes wide. "This is something else." Kelthar crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. "You see now why your so-called wizardry will fail. Your technology is primitive compared to ours." Daniel ignored the comment and began examining the ship. His team of engineers followed, pulling out tools that looked laughably simple next to the Tandari's sleek equipment. The Tandari watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. After an hour of inspection, Daniel finally straightened up. "Found your problem." Kelthar raised an eyebrow. "Impossible. We have scanned every system, every circuit. There is nothing left to find." "Yeah, that's the problem," Daniel said, pointing to a glowing panel. "You've over-engineered this thing. Too many systems trying to outthink each other. Your core stabilizer isn't broken. It's overloaded. It's like trying to pour an ocean through a straw." Vrain tilted her head, her skin flickering to a pale blue. "A straw." Daniel waved her off. Never mind. Point is, your tech is fighting itself. You've got redundancies piled on redundancies. It's brilliant, but it's also a mess. Kelthar looked skeptical. And your solution? Daniel grinned. We're gonna bypass half your systems and reroute power manually. Strip it down to the basics. The Tandari exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of simplifying their technology was almost offensive. To them, complexity was perfection. You can't possibly mean to tamper with our systems in such a crude way, Kelthar said. It's reckless. Reckless is kind of our thing, Daniel said, pulling out a small, clunky device from his toolkit. It was a soldering tool, something that looked absurdly outdated in the high-tech alien environment. Trust me, sometimes simpler is better. The humans get to work. The Tandari watched in silence as the human engineers began their work. They dismantled panels, rerouted circuits, and attached makeshift devices to the Zithara systems. At one point, Daniel used duct tape to secure a critical component, causing Vrain to emit a sound that could only be described as a gasp. "What is that adhesive material?" she asked, her tone bordering on horror. "Duct tape," Daniel said casually, "holds the universe together. You don't have this stuff." Vrain looked at Kelthar, who shook his head slowly. "Your methods are alarming," she said. Daniel chuckled. "Relax. We've done crazier things before. Doubt and friction." Hours passed, and the Tandari grew increasingly uneasy. The Zithara systems flickered as the humans made adjustments, and at one point, the ship's interior lights dimmed completely. Kelthar turned to Dr. Meyer, who was observing quietly. "Are you truly comfortable letting this man interfere with our ship?" he asked. Dr. Meyer smiled. "You'll understand soon enough. Just watch." Kelthar frowned but said nothing. He couldn't understand the humans' confidence. Their methods were chaotic, their tools primitive. And yet there was a strange energy in the air, a feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. The first sign of hope. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Daniel stepped back and wiped his hands on his jumpsuit. "All right," he said, moment of truth. "Let's see if the old girl wants to wake up." He pressed a button on the control panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Zithara began to hum. The lights flickered back on, and the walls pulsed with energy. The core stabilizer, which had been dormant for weeks, roared to life, its glow brighter than ever. The Tandari stared in stunned silence. Vrain's skin flickered between orange and blue, a sign of intense emotional conflict. How did you?" Daniel shrugged. "Told you. Wizards. Suspenseful ending." Kelthar approached the core stabilizer, his expression unreadable. He placed a hand on the glowing panel, feeling the energy coursing through the ship. "This should not have been possible," he said quietly. Daniel leaned against the wall, his grin returning. "Yeah, well, humans have a habit of doing the impossible." Before Kelthar could respond, a sudden alarm blared. The Zithara systems flashed red, and a holographic display appeared, showing a massive object hurtling towards the ship. A meteor, larger than anything the Tandari had ever encountered. "Looks like the universe just gave us a bigger problem," Daniel said, his tone calm but serious. "Good thing we're not done being wizards yet. The impossible begins." The meteor loomed on the Zithara's holographic display, a massive, jagged rock tumbling through the void. Its trajectory was unmistakable, on a direct collision course with the stranded alien craft. The Tandari, typically unshakable, showed visible signs of panic. Their translucent skin glowed erratically, and their melodic voices rose in anxious tones. "This meteor is nearly the size of a small moon," Kelthar said, his voice clipped. "Our ship's propulsion systems are offline. Evacuation is our only option." Daniel Carter leaned against a console, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Evacuation? Nah, we're not done yet." Kelthar whirled around, his glowing eyes narrowing. You can't be serious. You think your wizardry can stop a meteor of that size? Even our advanced weapons wouldn't make a dent. Daniel shrugged, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the rising tension. Good thing we're not planning to blow it up. We're gonna move it. The wild plan. The Tandari delegation exchanged looks, their skin flickering in shades of confusion and disbelief. Move it? Vrain asked. You speak as if it's a pebble on a beach. Do you even comprehend the gravitational forces at play? Yeah, I get it. Big rock, lots of momentum, Daniel said, waving a hand dismissively. But momentum's just another problem to solve. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's solving problems. Kelthar was losing patience. Your arrogance is insufferable. What is your plan? Daniel grinned, pulling a small device from his toolkit. It looked absurdly primitive, a compact set of wires, magnets, and glowing coils. We're gonna build a temporary gravitational tractor. We'll use your ship's power core to create a localized gravitational pull strong enough to nudge the meteor off course. Vrain stared at the device, her glowing skin turning a pale green, a sign of disbelief. That won't work. The calculations alone would take hours, and the meteor will impact us in less than 20 minutes. Then we better get started, Daniel said, already tinkering with the Zitherus control systems. His human team sprang into action, moving with a confidence that bordered on recklessness. A clash of methods. The Tandari watched in a mix of horror and fascination as the humans worked. They bypassed safety protocols, dismantled sections of the ship, and cobbled together parts into strange, clunky devices. It was chaos, yet somehow it was organized chaos. The Tandari couldn't understand how such unorthodox methods could possibly succeed. You're dismantling critical systems. Kelthar snapped as Daniel ripped out a glowing conduit and tossed it to an assistant. Do you even understand the consequences of what you're doing? Yep, Daniel said without looking up. Consequences are what happened if we don't do this. Relax, big guy. We've got this. Kelthar's frustration boiled over. Your reckless behavior is exactly why your species is considered primitive. You lack precision, discipline, and you lack guts, Daniel interrupted, finally looking up. You think perfection is the only way to solve a problem. But sometimes, it's about making things work with what you've got. That's what we do. Kelthar opened his mouth to argue but was interrupted by a loud hum. The improvised gravitational tractor began to glow, its coils pulsing with energy. The entire ship vibrated as the device came to life. The meteor moves. All right, moment of truth, Daniel said, stepping back from the console. Let's see if this thing works. He pressed a button, and the tractor's energy field extended outwards, invisible to the naked eye, but powerful enough to make the Zithera shudder. The holographic display showed the meteor, now bathed in faint, glowing tendrils of gravitational energy. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the rock's trajectory began to shift. It's working, Vrain whispered, her skin flickering between blue and white. The meteor is moving. Kelthar stared at the display, his disbelief giving way to awe. You're redirecting a celestial object with that. Yeah, Daniel said, a smug grin on his face. And we're not even done yet. The unexpected twist. As the meteor veered off its collision course, the Zithera's systems suddenly blared a warning. A surge of energy from the gravitational tractor was overloading the ship's power core. Lights flickered, and the hum of the core grew dangerously loud. Oh, Daniel muttered. That's not good. What have you done? Kelthar demanded, his glowing eyes wide. You're destabilizing our power core. Relax, Daniel said, already typing furiously on the console. I just need to redistribute the load. Might get a little bumpy, though. A little bumpy. Vrain repeated, her tone rising. You've jeopardized the entire ship. Yeah, but we're not dead, are we? Daniel shot back. Give me 2 minutes. The Zithera trembled violently as the gravitational tractor strained against the meteor's mass. The Tandari delegation clung to the walls, their glowing skin flickering in panic. Daniel, unfazed, continued working, his hands a blur on the console. The last-minute save. With seconds to spare, Daniel redirected the excess energy into the ship's auxiliary systems. The Zithera stabilized, and the gravitational tractor completed its task. The meteor, now safely off course, drifted harmlessly into the void. The room fell silent, save for the hum of the ship's systems. Helthar turned to Daniel, his expression unreadable. You saved us." Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a triumphant grin on his face. "Told you. Wizards." Vrain's glowing skin shifted to a soft pink, a sign of embarrassment among the Tandari. "I don't understand how you did it. Your methods are illogical, chaotic." "But they work," Daniel interrupted. "That's the thing about humans. We don't play by the rules. We make our own." Suspenseful ending. As the humans celebrated, a new alert blared through the ship. Kelthar turned to the holographic display, his face darkening. Another object had entered the system, this one larger, faster, and emitting strange energy signatures. This is no meteor," Kelthar said, his voice low. "It's something else." Daniel cracked his knuckles. "Looks like the universe isn't done testing the wizards yet." Engineering or sorcery? The room fell into an uneasy silence as the holographic display zoomed in on the incoming object. It was massive, angular, and pulsing with ominous red lights. Its trajectory was clear. It was heading directly toward the Zithera. The strange energy readings it emitted suggested one thing. It wasn't natural. This wasn't a meteor. This was a ship. Kelthar's glowing eyes widened. "This is no ordinary vessel. These energy signatures belong to the Skarn, a warlike species we had hoped to never encounter again." "Skarn?" Daniel asked, leaning closer to the display. "They don't sound friendly." "They're not," Vrain replied, her voice trembling slightly. "They are scavengers and conquerors. If they've detected our disabled ship, they'll assume we're vulnerable." Daniel straightened, a confident grin spreading across his face. "Well, they're in for a surprise, aren't they? Preparing for the unknown." The Zithera's systems were still unstable, and the human engineers were scrambling to keep the core from overheating after the gravitational tractor ordeal. Dr. Elena Meyer, who had been monitoring the situation quietly, stepped forward. "Kelthar, how long until they reach us?" Kelthar checked the display. 15 minutes, perhaps less." Dr. Meyer turned to Daniel. "Do we have any chance of defending ourselves?" Daniel scratched his head. "Defending? No. Surviving? Maybe. Depends on how crazy we're willing to get." Kelthar shot him a glare. "You are suggesting more reckless improvisation against a Skarn warship." Daniel nodded, already pulling open a nearby panel. "Reckless improvisation is kind of our thing. Besides, if we can't outgun them, we'll outsmart them." The crazy plan. Daniel quickly outlined his idea, his voice calm and steady despite the rising tension. "We're going to trick the Skarn into thinking we're more dangerous than we actually are. We'll amplify the Zithera's energy output and create the illusion of a fully armed, battle-ready warship." Kelthar's glowing eyes narrowed. "That is impossible. Our weapon systems are offline, and our energy reserves are critically low." "Yeah, but your ship has something ours doesn't," Daniel said, gesturing to the glowing walls. "Your tech is alive. Sort of. We can use that to generate a holographic projection big enough to scare them off." Vrain blinked, her translucent skin flickering to a soft yellow. "A hologram. That won't hold up to scrutiny." "It doesn't have to," Daniel replied. "We just need them to hesitate long enough for us to jumpstart your engines and get out of here." Kelthar hesitated, torn between disbelief and desperation. Finally, he nodded. "Do what you must." The Tandari's perspective. As Daniel and his team worked, the Tandari delegation observed with a mix of awe and skepticism. To the Tandari, human engineers were chaotic, their methods crude and imprecise, and yet there was something undeniably fascinating about the way they approached problems. Vrain whispered to Calthar, "Their methods defy logic, yet they continue to achieve the impossible. Could there be some truth to their claims of wizardry?" Calthar's expression hardened. There is no such thing as magic, only ingenuity and recklessness. But even as he spoke, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt. Were these humans simply reckless, or were they something more? The illusion takes shape. The humans worked with furious speed, reconfiguring the Zithera's energy systems and repurposing parts of the holographic interface. Sparks flew, and alarms blared as the ship groaned under the strain. Daniel barked orders, his voice calm but commanding. "Increase the power output by 20%. No, wait, make it 30%. He called out, "If this thing doesn't look like it's about to blow a hole in the galaxy, it's not gonna work." The Tandari watched as the Zithera's exterior began to shift. The holographic projectors, now linked to the ship's core, created an image of a massive glowing weapon array. To anyone observing from the outside, the Zithera no longer looked like a damaged vessel. It looked like a heavily armed warship ready for battle. The Skarn approach. The Skarn ship slowed as it neared the Zithera, its red lights flickering ominously. From the observation room, the humans and Tandari watched as the enemy ship scanned their vessel. Calthar's voice was tense. "They're scanning us. If they detect the deception, they'll attack." "Let them scan," Daniel said, leaning back with a smirk. "The trick isn't making them believe we're armed. It's making them believe we're crazy enough to use it." The Skarn ship hovered for what felt like an eternity. Then, a transmission crackled through the comms. The voice was guttural and harsh, the language incomprehensible. The Tandari translated, "Who dares stand against the Skarn?" Daniel stepped forward, grinning. "Let's give them a show." The bluff. Using the Zithera systems, Daniel amplified his voice and broadcast a reply. "This is the Earth Tandari Alliance warship Zithera Prime. Stand down immediately, or we'll vaporize you where you float." Calthar stared at Daniel in disbelief. "Earth Tandari Alliance. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Daniel replied with a wink. The Skarn ship hesitated, its red lights dimming slightly. The humans and Tandari held their breath. Finally, the Skarn transmitted a single message. "We will meet again." The warship turned and disappeared into the darkness of space. The aftermath. As the tension drained from the room, Calthar turned to Daniel. "You risked everything on a bluff. If they had seen through it." "They didn't," Daniel interrupted. "And that's the point. Sometimes all you need is the right amount of crazy." Vrain looked at Daniel with a newfound respect. "Perhaps there is more to your wizardry than we realized." Daniel smirked. "Oh, you haven't seen anything yet." Suspenseful ending. As the humans and Tandari began repairing the ship, another alert sounded. This time, it was a distress signal from deep within the Tandari's home sector. Calthar's face darkened as he read the transmission. "The Skarn weren't running away," he said grimly. "They were heading toward one of our colonies." Daniel cracked his knuckles, his grin returning. "Looks like it's time for the wizards to save the day again." The miracle unfolds. The Zithera sped toward the source of the distress signal, its systems still unstable but operational enough to make the jump through hyperspace. Inside, the Tandari delegation worked frantically to interpret the incoming data. The signal was garbled but clear enough to reveal a chilling truth. The Skarn weren't attacking a random colony. They were targeting Kevara Prime, one of the Tandari's most advanced and heavily populated worlds. Calthar's voice was grim. "If the Skarn reach Kevara Prime, they'll strip it bare. They won't just attack. They'll enslave the survivors and leave nothing behind." Daniel Carter stood by, leaning casually against a console. His human engineering team worked quietly behind him, checking and double-checking the ship's systems. "So," Daniel said, breaking the tension, "what's the plan?" Kelthar turned to him, his translucent skin glowing faintly. "The plan is to stop them. Though I doubt your improvisations will be of much use against a fleet." Daniel grinned. "A fleet, huh? Sounds like fun." A desperate situation. As the Zithera emerged from hyperspace, the scene was worse than anyone had imagined. The Skarn fleet had already begun their assault on Kavera Prime. Massive, jagged ships hovered over the planet, unleashing torrents of energy that lit up the atmosphere like a storm of fire. Tandari defense ships buzzed around them, hopelessly outmatched by the Skarn's overwhelming firepower. Kelthar's voice wavered as he spoke. "We are too late. Kavera Prime's defenses are failing. Even with the Zithera, we can't match their firepower." Daniel looked at the display, his expression unreadable. Then, without warning, he clapped his hands. "All right, folks, time for some wizardry." Kelthar stared at him, incredulous. "You can't possibly believe you can turn the tide of this battle." Daniel smirked. "No, but I believe we can give them something else to worry about. You still have that fancy holographic projection system, right?" Vrain blinked, her skin flickering in shades of confusion. "Yes, but how does that?" "We're gonna make the Zithera look like an entire fleet," Daniel interrupted. "And not just any fleet. A fleet from the Earth-Tandari Alliance." Kelthar's glowing eyes narrowed. "That alliance doesn't exist." "Details," Daniel said with a wave of his hand. "The Skarn don't know that." Creating an illusion, the human engineers got to work, once again pushing the Zithera's systems beyond their limits. Using the same holographic technology they had used to bluff the Skarn earlier, they began creating projections of dozens of massive warships, each bristling with weapons. From a distance, it would look like an unstoppable armada had just emerged from hyperspace. "We're gonna need to sell this," Daniel said, adjusting the projections to make them flicker menacingly. "Make it look like we're ready to blast them out of the sky." Kelthar, still skeptical, asked, "And what happens when they realize it's a bluff?" Daniel grinned. "Then we improvise." The Skarn's response. As the holographic fleet appeared, the Skarn hesitated. Their ships slowed, their weapons falling silent for the first time since the battle had begun. On the Zithera's display, a massive Skarn warship turned toward the supposed Alliance fleet. A guttural voice boomed over the comms. "Earth and Tandari. Allied? Impossible. You dare challenge the Skarn." Daniel leaned into the microphone, his voice steady and calm. "Damn right we do. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. Leave this system, or we'll show you just how deadly the Earth-Tandari Alliance can be." The Tandari delegation exchanged uneasy glances. The bluff was bold, too bold. If the Skarn called it, there would be no escape. The turning point. The Skarn seemed to hesitate, their fleet repositioning defensively. But just as it seemed the bluff might work, a smaller Skarn ship fired a probing shot at one of the holographic projections. The shot passed harmlessly through the image, revealing the deception. "They've seen through it," Kelthar said, his voice tight with dread. "They'll destroy us now." "Not yet," Daniel said, already working on a new plan. "We're gonna give them something real to be scared of." He turned to his team. "Divert all power to the ship's core. We're gonna overload it and turn it into the biggest EMP this sector has ever seen." Vrain gasped. "That would disable every ship in the area, including ours." "Exactly," Daniel said. "But it'll buy us time to get the Tandari civilians off Kavera Prime. Sometimes you gotta take a hit to win the game." The miracle. As the Zithera powered up, its core began to glow brighter and brighter, bathing the ship in an eerie blue light. The Tandari, though terrified, worked alongside the humans to prepare for the massive energy surge. Alarms blared, and the ship groaned under the strain. Finally, Daniel gave the command. "Fire it up." The Zithera unleashed a massive pulse of energy, spreading out like a shockwave. The Skarn ships went dark, their systems fried. Even the Zithera itself powered down, leaving the entire battlefield in eerie silence. Cathar stared at Daniel in disbelief. "You've crippled us all. How is this a victory?" Daniel grinned, pointing at the display. "Because now we've got the upper hand." A daring escape. Using backup power, the humans and Tandari coordinated a daring evacuation of Kavera Prime's population. Small, fast ships ferried civilians to safety while the Skarn fleet drifted powerless in orbit. By the time the Skarn began to recover, the Tandari and their human allies were long gone. Cathar turned to Daniel as the Zithera limped away from the battle. "You risked everything, broke every rule, and defied all logic. And yet, you succeeded." Daniel shrugged. "Like I said, we're wizards. It's what we do." Suspenseful ending. As the Tandari celebrated their survival, a message came through on the comms. It was from the Skarn, their guttural voices laced with fury. "Earth, Tandari, this is not over. The Skarn do not forget." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his grin widening. "Good. We'll be ready." Secrets revealed. The Zithera limped through hyperspace, its systems barely holding together after the daring escape. The Tandari delegation, still reeling from the events, convened in the observation deck. The humans, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to stabilize the ship, their unorthodox methods both impressing and unsettling their alien counterparts. Cathar stood by the massive window, gazing at the streaks of light outside. His glowing eyes were dimmer than usual, a rare sign of emotional conflict among the Tandari. "I must admit," he said quietly, "your methods, though reckless, have achieved what we thought impossible. Yet, I can't shake the feeling that there is more to your ingenuity than mere improvisation." Daniel Carter, leaning against a nearby console, smirked. "You're not wrong. We've got a few tricks up our sleeves." Cathar turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Tricks or secrets?" "The human edge." Dr. Elena Meyer stepped forward, her tone measured and calm. "Cathar, I think it's time we explained why our engineers are called wizards. It's not just a nickname, it's a philosophy." Cathar tilted his head, his curiosity piqued. "Explain." Elena gestured to Daniel, who shrugged and took over. "See, your civilization is all about perfection. You build the best tech, the most advanced systems. But humans? We're not perfect. We've never had the luxury of perfection. We grew up solving problems with what little we had, scraps, duct tape, and sheer determination." Vrain's skin flickered with pale blue hues, a sign of doubt. "That hardly explains your uncanny ability to outthink even the Skarn." Daniel grinned. "It's not just about resources. It's about adaptability. We see technology as a tool, not a rule. And sometimes, we bend the rules. A hidden asset." Cathar frowned. "You speak in riddles. What are you hiding?" Daniel exchanged a glance with Dr. Meyer, who nodded. "Fine," he said. "You want to know the truth. Humans don't just innovate. We experiment. And sometimes, those experiments lead to unexpected results." He pulled up a holographic display, revealing schematics for a mysterious device. It was unlike anything the Tandari had seen before, raw, asymmetrical, and pulsing with a strange energy. "This," Daniel said, "is a prototype quantum entanglement stabilizer. We call it the Mirage Core. It's the reason we've been able to pull off half the things you've seen today." Cathar stepped closer, studying the schematics. "This technology, it's centuries ahead of what we assumed your species was capable of. How did you develop it?" Daniel hesitated, then said, "It wasn't just us. We stumbled onto something old, something alien. We reverse engineered it, and the Mirage Core was the result." A chilling revelation. Vrain's skin turned a pale green. "You're saying this device is based on alien technology?" "Whose technology?" Dr. Meyer's expression darkened. We don't know. The artifact we found was buried deep in Earth's crust, older than any known civilization. We only uncovered fragments, but those fragments changed everything. Kelthar's glowing eyes narrowed. And you thought it wise to tamper with such a discovery? Do you not understand the risks of meddling with powers you don't comprehend? Daniel chuckled. We're humans. Taking risks is kind of our thing. Kelthar shook his head, clearly troubled. And this Mirage core, you used it against the Skarn. Not directly, Daniel said. It powers our illusions, enhances our projections, and lets us bend reality just enough to create miracles. But yeah, it was a game changer. The Tandary's dilemma. The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation sank in. The Tandary were known for their strict adherence to logic and caution. To learn that the humans had built their greatest achievements on a foundation of mystery and risk was both fascinating and terrifying. Kelthar finally spoke. Your Mirage core is a double-edged sword. It gives you power, but at what cost? What happens when you encounter the creators of this technology? Daniel shrugged. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Vrain, her skin flickering with conflicted hues, asked, Why reveal this to us now? What do you hope to gain? Dr. Meyer answered, her voice steady. Because we believe in alliances built on trust. If we're going to face the Skarn together, and whoever else is out there, you need to understand what we bring to the table. A new challenge. Before the Tandary could respond, the ship's alarms blared. An incoming transmission crackled through the speakers, distorted but unmistakable. It was from Kavera Prime. The voice on the other end was frantic. This is Governor Tyrin of Kavera Prime. The Skarn fleet is regrouping, and they're not alone. We're detecting ships with unknown signatures. They're unlike anything we've seen before. Kelthar's expression darkened. Unknown ships? Could they be connected to the artifact? Daniel's grin faded. Guess we're about to find out. Suspenseful ending. As the Zithira prepared for battle, Daniel turned to Kelthar. You wanted to know why we call ourselves wizards. It's not just because we pull off the impossible. It's because we're always ready for the next challenge, no matter how crazy it gets. Kelthar's glowing eyes locked onto Daniel's. Then let us hope your wizardry is enough. For all our sakes. The holographic display lit up with the image of the incoming fleet, ships unlike any they had seen, with jagged otherworldly designs and a dark energy that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The humans and Tandary braced themselves as the Zithira accelerated toward the unknown. Humanity's legacy. The Zithira rocketed toward Kavera Prime, its damaged systems barely holding together. On board, the humans and Tandary braced themselves for what lay ahead. The holographic display flickered, showing the terrifying sight of the Skarn fleet flanked by the mysterious new ships. These vessels were angular and jagged, their hulls glowing faintly with a dark crimson energy. Their presence radiated a silent menace. Daniel Carter stood at the engineering console, his mind racing. All right, he said, breaking the tense silence. We've got two problems. The Skarn, and whoever these guys are. So let's do what we do best. Kelthar's glowing eyes narrowed. Improvise. Daniel grinned. Exactly. The unknown enemy. As the Zithira closed the distance, the comms crackled to life. A deep, guttural voice echoed through the ship. This is Commander Xyler of the Skarn fleet. Surrender the Zithira and its humans, or face annihilation. Before anyone could respond, another voice interrupted. It was cold, metallic, and alien, speaking in a language the translation matrix struggled to parse. The words were chilling. The artifact is ours. You have awakened it, and now you will pay the price. Vrain turned to Daniel, her skin flickering a pale green. Artifact. They're talking about the Mirage core, aren't they? Looks like it, Daniel said, his expression darkening. Guess our new friends here aren't fans of us playing with their toys. Kelthar stepped forward, his voice steady. Then we must destroy the Mirage core. if it is drawing them here. Not an option, Daniel interrupted. The core's the only thing keeping us in this fight. Without it, we're dead in the water. Kelthar frowned but said nothing. The room was silent except for the hum of the ship's failing systems. The last stand. The Zithera emerged into the battlefield, Kavera Prime looming large below. The planet's surface was a chaos of fires and smoke, its defenses overwhelmed by the skarn. Above, the unknown ships hovered ominously, their presence alone sending shockwaves through the Tandari forces. Daniel's voice cut through the tension. All right, here's the plan. We're gonna use the Mirage Core to project a false signal, a fake artifact. If they think the core is somewhere else, they'll chase the ghost. Meanwhile, we take the real core straight into their flagship and blow it sky high. Kelthar stared at him. You intend to deliver the core to the heart of the enemy. That's madness. Yeah, Daniel said with a smirk. But it's also the best distraction we've got. The feint. Using the last reserves of the Zithera's power, the humans and Tandari engineers created a decoy signal. The Mirage Core's unique energy signature was amplified and projected to a point far beyond the battlefield. As expected, the unknown ships immediately shifted their focus, breaking away from the Skarn fleet to pursue the ghost. It's working, Vrain said, her skin glowing a soft pink, the Tandari equivalent of hope. They're leaving. Not all of them, Kelthar pointed out grimly. One of the unknown ships remained, its crimson glow intensifying as it scanned the Zithera. It was clear they weren't entirely fooled. No time to celebrate, Daniel said. We've still got a date with the Skarn flagship, the infiltration. As the Zithera approached the Skarn flagship, the ship shuddered violently. Skarn cannons opened fire, their energy blasts narrowly missing the battered vessel. Shields are failing, a Tandari technician called out. We won't survive another hit. Then we better not get hit, Daniel said, steering the ship manually. Hang on, folks. This is gonna be tight. The Zithera dove and weaved through the Skarn fleet, narrowly avoiding destruction. Finally, it reached the flagship and latched onto its hull using improvised magnetic clamps. Kelthar looked at Daniel, his glowing eyes filled with disbelief. You intend to board the Skarn flagship with this crew? Daniel grabbed a makeshift energy rifle and grinned. Got a better idea. The final battle. The boarding team, made up of humans and Tandari, entered the Skarn flagship through a breach in its hull. Inside, the atmosphere was oppressive, the walls lined with jagged metal and pulsating red veins of energy. The Skarn soldiers were waiting, their hulking forms blocking the corridors. The fight was brutal. The humans, with their unorthodox combat tactics, managed to hold their own alongside the more disciplined Tandari. Daniel led the charge, using both his rifle and his wits to outmaneuver the Skarn. Keep moving, he shouted. We've got to reach the core chamber. The ultimate sacrifice. The team finally reached the heart of the Skarn flagship, a massive chamber glowing with ominous red light. In the center was the ship's power core, a swirling vortex of raw energy. Daniel set the Mirage Core down and began rigging it to overload. You realize this will destroy the entire ship, Kelthar said. Including us. Daniel didn't look up. Yeah, well, sometimes you've got to go out with a bang. Daniel, Dr. Meyer began, but he cut her off. No arguments, he said. Get everyone back to the Zithera. I'll finish this. Kelthar hesitated, then nodded. May your wizardry guide you. The miracle. As the others retreated, Daniel worked furiously to connect the Mirage Core to the Skarn power system. Alarms blared, and the ship trembled as Skarn reinforcements closed in. Just as the chamber door burst open, Daniel activated the core. The explosion wasn't fire and destruction. It was light. A massive pulse of energy erupted from the flagship, disabling every Skarn ship in the fleet and shattering the remaining unknown vessel. The flagship itself imploded, its destruction echoing across the battlefield. From the Zithera, The Tandari and humans watched in awe as the Skarn fleet went dark. Against all odds, the battle was over. The legacy. Hours later, as the survivors regrouped, Kalthar stood in the Zithera's observation deck, gazing at the debris field. Daniel Carter, he said quietly, was a fool, but he was also a hero. Dr. Meyer nodded, her expression somber. He proved something today, that humanity's greatest strength isn't its technology, it's its courage. Kalthar turned to her. Perhaps your kind are not wizards. Perhaps you are something greater. As the Zithera set course for safer territory, the Tandari and humans began forging a true alliance. Daniel's sacrifice had not only saved Kavera Prime, but had also shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of, turning the impossible into reality. Suspenseful epilogue. In the wreckage of the Skarn flagship, a single shard of the Mirage core floated silently, its glow faint but persistent. Deep in the void, something stirred. The unknown entities had not been destroyed. They were watching, and they were coming.